What's up, outliers? Welcome to Performance Bites for bite sized insights into complex subjects in health and performance. It's been a minute. I haven't made a new episode in a while, but been busy, but we're back. And this is a really good topic. It's something that if you've ever actually worked with me in person, which if you have, you've heard me definitely talk about this principle. It's probably one of my favorite things to bring up when it comes to training, and that's the SAID principle. So the said principle actually is specific adaptation to impose demand. Now, when we're training, a lot of the times people are wondering why we're doing this or why we're doing that. And what it really is we're trying to elicit adaptation to the body to become better at specific things. And that's really kind of what it comes down to is when we train, we're looking to obviously, train to be a better runner, train to be a better mountain biker, train to be a better motocross rider, whatever the case be. And sometimes we can't do what we do for our sport in the gym. Obviously for motocross or mountain biking, not going to go ride your bike in the gym. And there's not really exercises that are going to transfer over that aren't just like, I don't know, frankly, ridiculous. So we're always kind of looking at what's the energy systems that we need to improve upon, what are the muscle groups that need to be improved upon, and also what are the muscle groups that are being left out of the equation. And that really kind of plays into how we create programming, how we create periodization, and utilize this said principle. So, simply put, you get better at what you train for. So, if we're training for to be a better runner and we want to be more efficient, increase our economy, but we are swimming a lot, probably not going to transfer over to being a better runner. It might help with your cardiovascular endurance, but it's not going to help you be a better runner because that specific adaptation is not being worked to actually become better. So essentially, when we put a stress on the body, we're trying to stimulate adaptation. And several factors come into play when we're doing this because when we're training ourselves, obviously, there's physiological factors like muscle growth, bone strength, tendon ligament strength, our cardiovascular ability, our heart's ability to produce a bigger stroke volume, connective tissue, all of this sort of stuff is going to improve based upon how we basically train for it. And when it comes to basically creating a program, we're looking at what's the narrowed focus and what do we need to change to be better at the sport, be better at the activity, whatever it might be. So essentially, when we train, we go into the gym and we're looking at, okay, this person wants to be better on the mountain bike. What are the muscle groups that need to be worked? And also, what are the energy systems and the demands of the specific mountain bike event, even, because we can look at enduro, we could look at cross country, downhill. Like there's so many different things that even go into just mountain biking. So we need to look at, okay, is it going to be a long endurance thing? Is it going to be a sprint endurance thing? Is it going to be based upon explosiveness? And that's how we're really going to kind of pick that specific adaptation that we want to get from our training that's then going to transfer over. Now, there's sport specific training, of course, which would be actually like on the bike in this example. So, we're not going to do that once again, like I said, in the gym, but we can at least create adaptations that will then help when the individual goes and gets their seat time on their bike. And that's going to then transfer over really well so that they can go practice their specific skill sets onto wheels. So, in this example, essentially, if we're looking at sprint ability, we're going to be increasing things like neural drive, tendon stiffness, rate of force development, and stuff like that. That's going to essentially help an individual be able to use their fast twitch muscle fibers without scaring the body, essentially, because we do have proprioceptors, Golgi tendon organ, muscle spindles, and stuff like that, that basically regulate how much force production is going to come out of a muscle. And if we don't train it in the gym for those adaptations to occur, then when you go and get on the bike and you try and be very explosive or powerful, the body will give you something, but maybe it's not going to give you everything it needs. And so that's when the said principle with creating programs is really important because we need to basically teach the body that this little stress that we're putting on it is okay. It's not going to hurt it. And then it's going to also create adaptation throughout the program and the periodization that's going to allow the individual to be better at, said sport. Now, some major applications into program design is that the specificness of the program is kind of everything. So that's like the major rule is if we're being very specific on it, then we're going to get specific changes, which then can help an individual. And that's kind of like a common mistake because not all training is going to transfer to everything. So, like, of course, yes, if you're training for endurance style sport, that's going to be good because, yeah, you're going to help your cardiovascular ability. You're going to get in better cardiovascular shape. But if you're doing that, like I said, via swimming and your sport is running, those are two different things completely because one involves major impact on the joints. So, there's an adaptation that is going to need to be made with the body is force impact and also rate of force development to come out of those things. Meanwhile, swimming, very low impact. And also, we're going from a vertical body position to a horizontal body position. So, those are just two different things. Even though the cardiovascular ability is still needed in both, they're definitely not going to fully transfer over one to another. And that's where like cross training comes in too, because cross training isn't going to be specific. So, like, if a program has a cross training in it, say you are a runner and you are going to go swim on a Saturday as a recovery, that's just to get the body moving, just to get blood flow and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily going to fully transfer over to your running. As I said, they're completely different things. So the said principle really doesn't allow for the body to become a better runner because you went swimming, on the Saturday. But is that good for your recovery? Absolutely. Now, another misunderstanding too is that having endurance is going to help everything, which isn't fully true because just because you are able to go run a mile doesn't mean you're going to be able to run 100 meters fast. It means you're going to be able to run that 100 meters, but to do it fast, it's not really going to be the full transfer over that you would expect it to be. Now, even the other way around, if you're doing a lot of sprinting, that's not going to transfer over to being able to run really far, but your legs are going to at least be adapted to high impact. So there's something to be said about training a sprint mode to go into distance compared to like distance to go into a sprint mode. And also, fast twitch muscle fibers are going to be obviously much more active from sprinting than they would be from distance running. But according to this said principle, neither are going to really transfer over fully. And if you're doing both of them, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong or that you're not going to get any benefit. It's just more so that if you're really trying to elevate a certain adaptation so that you can go run a half marathon or run a marathon, you need to know a time and place when to use things and also when to progressively overload things so that your body's creating, the adaptation over time to become a better overall runner essentially. And to kind of get deeper into like the periodization and the programming of the said principle, essentially, and how we apply this, how a coach should apply this, I should say, is we break things up into different parts of a training season, essentially. So even if you're not like in a specific sport where you're going to be, in season from March up to September or, something of the sort, you can still have ebbs and flows that are going to help to build and develop the body over time through different ways of adapting to your body. So, let's say an athlete is just trying to be in the best physical shape so that they can go do the thing that they want to do at any time. A friend asked, "Hey, let's go run this half marathon in 12 weeks." You would be capable of doing that. Because I feel like most people are probably in a place that it's like maybe not one specific thing that they're trying to be the best at, but they're more so wanting to be ready for the occasion of, a mountain bike race or running, rock climbing, go riding their dirt bike, just be capable of doing the fun things essentially. So, how we would lay this out over essentially 12 months is we would break it up into essentially these mesocycles because the 12 months would be a macro cycle. So, that's our big cycle. And we would break it up into mesocycles. And within those mesocycles, they can be anywhere from 2 to 3 months, maybe even 4 months, depending on how you want to break this up, because we can look at it a couple different ways of a preseason, an in season, a postseason, and an off season. Now, each one of those is going to have like general adaptation or specific adaptations or maintenance and stuff that kind of come into play. So for most people, a lot of activity happens around summertime. So we'll call that in season. And we'll call early fall postseason, which usually only lasts for maybe about a month. And then we'll call 2 to 3 months time through the winter as a off season, and then 2 to 3 months from January to March as a preseason again. So I kind of say that, and I'm actually kind of explaining the split that I work with. Funny enough, so when you do that, you can work for different adaptations to happen that are then going to play into the next adaptation and so forth. So if I'm going to be looking at something like that, I'm going to be doing a lot of, for preseason, I'm going to be doing a lot of building specifically for what I would like to be doing. So that would be like more general adaptation mixed with specific adaptations. And that's going to be like a lot more strength based stuff, which, if you listen to other episodes, are going to be like reps and sets of like 4 sets of 6 at like 85% of 1 rep max type stuff. Now, when we get out of that and we go into a more of an in season, we want to maintain our strength, but also we can start to incorporate in more power work. And that's going to start to transfer over to like how we are able to perform in activities and stuff like that. So we went from like a general strength to specific strength. Now we're in power, and these are all specific adaptations that we're trying to get into the body. And we're taking time, maybe it's 4 weeks, maybe it's 8 weeks, maybe it's even 12 weeks to gain these adaptations. Now, maintenance throughout an in season is really important, and also making sure that you're not doing too much and breaking yourself down. But this is kind of the time where you should feel your best. You should be able to perform at a high level. If somebody asks you to go do something, you should be capable of it. Now, summertime's over, it's September, and we're going to do an off season, or excuse me, a postseason for a month. Postseason looks like a lot of just like body weight movement mixed with mobility. So now that specific adaptation turns into like flexibility, mobility, which is great because a lot of people could probably use some time to just work on those things. And then once you get into an off season, that's when general hypertrophy, general strength really starts to kick in. So it's nothing specific to anything other than trying to gain strength or break down the tissue so that you can remodel the tissues. So that's kind of like the big thing if we lay it out and look at a year's worth of specific adaptations is we would go from the preseason of general strength, specific strength, in season to power and strength maintenance, and then a off season of mobility and flexibility, and then a I mix that up again. Postseason of flexibility, mobility, and an off season of just general hypertrophy, general strength. So these adaptations are very straightforward because if you're trying to program within, a year, we just look at what we're trying to do. And of course, everybody's going to have different movements that they need to do within these to basically, help out the weaknesses that they're experiencing or any correctives that they need. But ultimately, if you kind of keep this sort of rhythm throughout the years, you're going to build each year, and you're going to get better, better, better as long as you can mitigate, obviously, getting injured and stuff like that. But as far as like what you're really looking for long term wise is you want to make sure that you are still utilizing progressive overload so that you're basically just dosing stress, and then we're also still deloading. So as I said, like, each adaptation could be 4 to 12 weeks. We still want to make sure that there's dosage of stress over time, and then there's also deloading of stress so that the body can recover, so they can continue basically pushing the body to be better, better, better. Obviously, this is just a year's worth of a build. I didn't even go into the specific movements or anything like that, but you're gonna gain a lot more by keeping it simple in those different blocks of training than making it like random. And that's, I always say, like the difference between training and working out is training. There's a plan in place where we're following a routine over time that is going to basically utilize this said principle so that you can create an adaptation compared to the randomness of like just going and working out and picking this movement, this movement, that movement, and maybe even like total volumes throughout the weeks aren't even increasing. They're maybe even decreasing because you're not paying attention to the numbers and stuff like that to have that progressive overload in place. So I would definitely like recommend keeping it very simple, keeping it very specific to what you want out of your body over, that 4 to 12 weeks time, letting the body adapt, letting it understand what you're asking of it, and then moving on from those things, whether it's in a progressive manner of a movement going from a goblet squat to a barbell back squat. It could be as simple as that. It doesn't need to be complicated. And compound movements are always going to be a great way to utilize adaptations over doing like single joint, single muscle. Of course, everybody has a different thing, but I'm talking about sports performance. I'm not talking about bodybuilding. So having multiple joints, multiple muscles working together is going to transfer over to sport, obviously, because we're not going to utilize just our bicep on its own. Typically, it's going to be working with other muscles to create a performance based movement. So it's very important to just look at like movement quality, but also what is that movement and how is that movement going to transfer? Because that is what the said principle is all about. Is how is something that we're doing in the gym in our training going to transfer to outside of our gym? And this is where a lot of people kind of get frustrated within training because they're like, oh, I did that movement last week. And it's like, yeah, you did. And you're going to do it the next week too. And so you really have to kind of buy into the systems that are in place because these are the systems that the body needs to make change. Because if you only ever do one movement ever so often, it's unlikely that you're going to get any better at it. Like it's no different than if you want to go shoot a basketball. Like if you shoot a basketball one day and then the next day you're out playing tennis, but you're wondering why your shot from, the 3-point line is not getting better. It's like, well, you didn't do the thing. So simply put, yes, it can be a little bit redundant. Yes, it can get boring sometimes, but the best athletes are the ones that are able to basically withstand that boredom and that redundancy. And that allows them to create major adaptations that then carry over into their sport activity or their hobby or whatever the case be. And it also helps to keep muscular balance in the body because a good written program is going to make sure that it's covering all the bases of push, pulls, verticals, horizontals, transverse, sagittals, frontal planes, all these different things in the way that the body essentially moves to keep a nice equal balance, reduce chance of injury, get you stronger, get you feeling better, and get you out doing the things that you really love to do. So, obviously, these are principles that I personally use as a coach with any athletes that I work with or any clients that I work with. So, if this is very interesting, you want to go in the deeper end of it, and you want to kind of maybe see how this is going to look for you, go over to my website, outlierathlete.com, book a consultation with me. Let's talk. Let's see what we can put together for you and help you out. It's super fun for me to do. Obviously, chatting with new people, seeing new goals, and seeing what can be drawn up to get somebody, from where they're at to where they want to be. So, thanks so much for listening, watching, and I really appreciate it. Please like, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.